I smelled it before I saw it. That sharp, bitter scent in the cold dawn air, sneaking through the cracks around my window. I opened my eyes, confused, heart thumping, trying to place it. Then I saw the glow. Flickering, angry, orange light licking up the walls, dancing across the curtains. I didn't think. My body moved before my mind caught up, throwing the sheets off, feet slamming against the floor as I ran to the front door, yanking it open. And there it was, fire, alive, loud, snapping and popping, crawling up my porch, eating the railing, reaching for the roof with greedy fingers. Sparks shot into the darkness, smoke twisting like a black snake into the sky. And across the road I saw them, 3 figures, hoodies pulled up, faces half hidden, but I could see them, their eyes, their smiles. They were laughing, they were recording, they thought it was funny. They thought this was a joke, a show. They thought they'd won. They didn't know me. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know that the man standing barefoot in the cold, watching flames eat his home, was a federal judge who'd spent a lifetime putting men like them behind bars. And as the fire crackled, and they whispered and filmed, I felt it, calm, because they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. 6 months earlier, it was different. It was quiet. Just 2 people at my door, fake smiles plastered on their faces, clipboards clutched in their hands like shields. Hi, Mr. Carter. The woman chirped, her voice sugar. Sweet, I'm Denise, and this is Ron. We're with the Ridge HOA. I just looked at them. She cleared her throat, glancing at Ron before trying again. We're here to welcome you to the community and get you signed up with the HOA. It's mandatory for all residents. No, I said. She blinked. I'm sorry. No, I repeated, stepping out onto the porch, folding my arms. Denise's smile wavered just for a moment. Well, it's not really optional. Everyone joins, and we have community standards to uphold. My property is exempt, I replied. You'd know that if you checked your documents. Her face froze, then her eyes narrowed, and she gave me a thin, polite smile. It's just easier for everyone if we all participate. No, I said again and closed the door. The next morning, there was an envelope taped to my gate. HOA fees due, $500. I laughed, tore it down, threw it away. Then came another, and another, each one higher, each one threatening legal action. Then I started seeing Ron parked across the street, taking photos of my driveway, my fence, my yard, my dog. I walked out one day, standing in the gravel, staring at him as he clicked away. Get off my property, I said. He pretended not to hear, but he left. Then came the rumors. At the grocery store, people would turn away when they saw me, whispering, I'd catch bits and pieces. He's so rude. Doesn't care about the neighborhood. Think he's better than everyone. I'd seen it before. I'd seen men try to control a narrative, try to isolate, to bully. But this wasn't a courtroom. This was my home, and I wasn't going anywhere. Then, one night, I heard it. Tires crunching on gravel, lights sweeping across the windows. I looked out, saw the truck, saw the doors open, saw the figures climb out carrying something heavy, sloshing. Gasoline. I called the sheriff, but I knew they'd be too late, and then I saw the match. The flame, the sudden whoosh as fire leapt onto the porch, racing across the wood, climbing, growing, roaring. They laughed as they ran. I stood there, barefoot, the cold biting at my skin, the fire hot against my face, the smoke burning my eyes. And I watched as they recorded. I watched as they got in their truck and drove off, still laughing. They thought I would break. They thought fear would win. But I was already moving, pulling the hard drive from the security system, backing up the footage, sending copies to the cloud, locking it all away. Because now I had them, and they had no idea what was coming. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my truck, engine idling, watching the last flames sputter as the fire trucks packed up. The cold dawn crawling across the blackened skeleton that used to be my porch. Neighbors peeked from windows, some clutching coffee mugs, others holding their kids back, whispering. But no one came over, not one. They were afraid of Denise, afraid of Ron, afraid of the HOA that had wrapped its claws around this neighborhood for years. But fear doesn't live in me, not anymore. That morning, Denise had the nerve to walk up my drive. She wore her bright pink jacket, the one she thought made her look important. Her hair was pinned tight, her lips pressed into that tight HOA smile. She pretended to gasp when she saw the charred remains. "Oh, Mr. Carter, what a terrible accident. I didn't speak." She glanced back at Ron, who stood at the edge of the drive, shifting from foot to foot, trying to look innocent, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. Denise stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You know, this could have all been avoided if you'd just joined the HOA. It's not too late to make things right." She actually smiled. I looked at her, long and hard, letting the silence stretch, letting her feel the cold that lived in my bones. Then I turned my back on her and walked inside. She yelled after me, "You think you're untouchable?" I didn't answer because she had no idea who she was talking to. The sheriff came by that afternoon. He looked tired, hat in his hands, his eyes scanning the wreckage. "Judge Carter," he said quietly, "we'll investigate, but—" I held up the hard drive. His eyebrows shot up. "You have footage." I nodded. We plugged it in right there in his truck, the screen flickering to life. They came into view, clear as day, Ron's truck, Todd climbing out, the gas cans, the laughter as they doused my porch, the fire catching, the flames rising. The sheriff's jaw clenched, his hands tightened on the wheel. "Well," he said, "looks like we have ourselves a case." The next day the arrest started. Ron was first, led out of his house in handcuffs, his wife screaming, his kids crying. Todd was next, pale and shaking, trying to cover his face as the deputies pushed him into the cruiser. Denise tried to hide. She locked herself inside, screaming at the officers, threatening lawsuits, claiming it was all a mistake. They kicked in the door, dragged her out. She was still screaming when they cuffed her, still screaming when they put her in the back of the car, her voice cracking as she threatened everyone within earshot. "You can't do this to me. I am the HOA." But she wasn't anymore, because the moment they closed that cruiser door, the spell was broken. The neighbors came out, standing on porches, in driveways, watching, whispering. They saw the queen fall, they saw the lies unravel, they saw what justice looked like. The HOA tried to survive. They called emergency meetings, sent letters begging for donations to cover legal fees. They claimed they were the victims, that I was trying to destroy the neighborhood. But people didn't believe them anymore, because I released the footage. I let the truth speak. Neighbors saw the faces, heard the laughter, watched as Denise and her thugs lit the match that burned down my home. They couldn't deny it anymore. Then came the lawsuit, $3 million. They tried to laugh it off. Then the first lawyer quit. The second lawyer tried to settle. The third lawyer told them to file bankruptcy. They tried everything to escape. But the law doesn't forget. Fraud, harassment, arson, emotional damages they would pay. While they panicked, I rebuilt. I hired local workers who had been bullied by the HOA. Paid them fair, on time, every time. We cleared the rubble together, laid the foundation, framed the walls. Day after day we rebuilt, and neighbors would stop by, dropping off food, offering to help, staying to talk. They told me stories. How Denise threatened to fine them for grass too long. How Ron told them their fences were 3 inches too high. How Todd demanded cash to waive violations. How they were all too scared to speak up. Until now, they started to stand up. Mrs. Gutierrez, who was fined for having a flower pot too close to the sidewalk, tore up the violation notice and threw it away. Mr. Lee, who was told to paint his shutters or pay a fine, slammed the door in the face of the compliance officer. People who had been afraid for years finally looked the HOA in the eye and said no, because they saw what happened when you refused to bow. They saw what happened when you fight back, and I watched, quietly, as my new home took shape. Fireproof siding, steel roof, security cameras on every corner, floodlights that turned night into day. They would never scare me again. When the house was done, I walked through the front door, the smell of fresh wood and paint thick in the air, the light pouring through the windows. I set down my keys on the counter, took a deep breath and smiled, because they tried to burn me out, but they only made me stronger. The neighborhood changed, the fear was gone, Denise was gone, Ron was gone. Todd was gone. The HOA was broken, a husk of what it used to be, drowning in debt, unable to pay its bills, unable to pay its lawyers, and the people were free. Free to live without fear, free to take back their homes, free to breathe again, and I sat on my new porch, coffee in hand, My dog curled at my feet, watching the sunrise over the quiet street, listening to the peace, knowing they could never take this from me again. Because they tried to break me, they tried to burn me, but in the end they only burned themselves. They thought it was over. They thought if they stayed quiet, if they avoided my eyes, if they hid behind their fences, this storm would pass. They thought I would walk away, satisfied with my rebuilt house, sipping coffee, pretending nothing happened, but I wasn't finished, because it was never about just me. It was about every family they bullied, every old man they threatened, every mother they scared with late-night knocks and fake fines, every child who saw their parents cry when the HOA sent another letter they couldn't afford to pay. The day we went to court for the lawsuit, it rained. Heavy, pounding rain that washed the gutters clean, that made the courthouse steps slick and dark. They arrived in a line, cheap umbrellas, cheap suits, their faces pale, eyes darting, clutching folders and whispering to each other. Denise was there, her hair pulled back, her face pinched and tired, her eyes darting around the hallway like a cornered animal. She saw me, and for the first time she looked away. They tried to argue. Their lawyer stumbled through excuses, calling the arson an isolated act, claiming the board didn't know, claiming it was community tension. I didn't say a word. The evidence spoke for me. The videos played, the court dead silent except for the sound of Denise's voice, laughing as the flames rose, the emails, the receipts, the fines, the threats, every piece laid out, one by one, brick by brick, until the whole ugly truth stood there, naked for everyone to see. The judge looked at them the way I had looked at countless defendants in my courtroom, with disappointment, with quiet, cold justice. Judgment, $3 million in damages, plus court costs, plus legal fees. The gavel came down like thunder, and it was done. The news spread faster than the fire ever had. Local HOA faces massive lawsuit for arson and harassment. Community leader arrested. Judge wins case against HOA bullies. People stopped me in town, shaking my hand, clapping my shoulder, thanking me. But I didn't do it for thanks. I did it so they could live without fear. Then came the collapse. The HOA accounts froze, drained by the judgment. Their emergency fund gone. Their legal defense fund gone. Their ability to pay their property manager, their landscaping, their utilities gone. They tried to hold one last meeting in the community center, desperate to rally support. But no one came except me. I stood in the doorway as they argued with each other, voices rising, papers flying, blame shifting like a storm. Denise saw me, her voice cracked. "You think you've won?" I looked at her calm. I didn't think. I said I knew. One by one they resigned. One by one they moved away. Ron left town in the middle of the night, his house foreclosed, the bank taking back what the court couldn't. Todd tried to stay, but neighbors wouldn't look at him. His kids got bullied at school, and eventually they packed up and left too. Denise stayed the longest, stubborn, clinging to the ashes of her power. But the liens on her home, the debt collectors, the constant calls, they broke her. She sold her house for half its worth and left, the for sale sign creaking in the wind for weeks before someone finally took it down. The neighborhood changed, slowly, like the seasons. Lawns grew without fear of fines. Kids played in driveways without someone driving by to inspect. Neighbors waved at each other, talked, shared stories of what they had survived. They started fixing fences, planting flowers, painting porches, not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. They built a real community, not one ruled by fear and fake power. I rebuilt my life too. Not just the house. The quiet mornings returned, the coffee warm in my hands as I sat on the porch, the sunrise soft across the grass. My dog at my feet, the breeze cool, the world calm. I started volunteering, teaching local kids about law, about rights, about how to stand up when the world tries to push you down. I helped neighbors who were still scared, showing them how to read their rights, how to protect themselves. I built something they couldn't burn. Sometimes I would see people drive by, slow, looking at the house, recognizing it from the news. They'd look at me, unsure. I'd nod, they'd nod back, because they knew. They knew what it meant to stand up. One morning, a young couple knocked on my door. They were moving in down the road, scared, unsure, hearing stories about what this neighborhood used to be. Is it true? They asked. Did the HOA really do all that? I looked at them and I smiled. It's true, I said, but that's over now. They let out a breath, relief washing over them. Thank you, they whispered, because that's why I fought. Not for revenge, not for money, but so the next family, the next child, the next neighbor wouldn't have to live in fear. So they could live free, so they could live, and if you ever wonder if it's worth standing up, if it's worth the fight, if it's worth the nights you can't sleep, the fear, the threats, remember this: they burned down my house, but I built something they could never touch. They tried to break me, but they only showed me how strong I am. They tried to silence me, but they only made my voice louder. They thought they owned this neighborhood, but the neighborhood was never theirs. It belongs to the people who live here, who love here, who care for each other. And it will never belong to fear again if they ever come for you, if they ever threaten what you love. Stand, fight, because you are stronger than you know, and in the end, justice always comes.